Hey everybody, it's Vanessa the Crafty Gemini, and welcome to episode number 150 of my WIP Wednesday weekly live show. Slightly different view, but I was so proud of my Halloween decor. I was like, we're not even going to be able to show how I decorated my window, but y'all can see part of it here since today we're going to be working on my Handi Quilter Moxie Longarm machine. So before I get started with today's demo and kind of catch y'all up on a couple things, let's pop into the chat real quick and see who is tuning in. Let me know where you're tuning in from if you're watching us on Facebook or on YouTube. I see Tamara's in the house. Hey Tamara. Hey Karen. Hi, Linda, tuning in from Kansas. We got Garnet in the house from Colorado. Hey, Garnet. Hi, Wendy, tuning in from Australia. We got Barb from Minnesota. I think Susie was on. I saw she was on earlier from Michigan. Hi, Susie. Hi, Diana. Great. Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, Phyllis, tuning in from Philadelphia. Good. We got a bunch of friends tuning in. It was super chilly here in Florida. I know. I see Marilyn is saying hi from a very windy space coast of Florida. It was so chilly this morning here, too. Nice and windy, and fall is definitely in the air. Let's hope it stays that way. And no more hurricanes, please. All right. Great. So we got a bunch of y'all tuning in. I'm assuming y'all can see me and hear me. And I wanted to just give y'all a quick update. I'm missing one video of my Spooky Craft Week, and that video is going to go up soon. I'm just finishing up the last editing touches, and it is for, I don't know if you can see here, probably not, but they are some spooky earrings that I cut out on my laser cutting machine. And I show you how it all works, how I cut them out, and how I use these fun new set of acrylic paint markers that I got to paint them. So I have some little ghosts. Aren't they cute? We got some spiders here, and I went ahead and put the red mark on them, so they're my Black Widow spider earrings here to rock the rest of this month. And then, of course, some fun little jack-o'-lanterns. So if you are in the market for a laser cutting machine, or maybe you already have one and you want to find out more about this, definitely make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel and that you're on my email list so that I can send you the link when this video tutorial goes live. And even if you don't have a laser cutter and everything, I think it's still going to be fun to watch. I think you'll get some good ideas on some other little projects and things that you can do. And it might be something to keep in the back of your mind if you do go down the route of investing in one of those laser cutting machines in the future. I'm wearing the bat ones here. I don't know if you can see, but it's like, it's cut out and there's two little bats on each and I painted them all black. They're so lightweight because I cut them out of 3mm basswood. If you watched my last video review that I did on the We Create Vision 20-watt laser cutter and engraving machine, this one is on their 10-watt machine. So it's more affordable. It's more for the hobby and home crafter. And it's the We Create Vista 10-watt laser cutting machine. And it's a lot smaller in terms of height, and the price is even better for a home crafter. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. If you missed some of the video tutorials on Spooky Craft Week, definitely go back and check it out. I did include the links to the tutorials in my email newsletter that I sent out today. In one of them, teach you how to make this fussy cut skull block that y'all have probably seen on my Instagram or on my Facebook already, and I put them together. I had made 6 blocks, but I went ahead and measured the wall that I'm going to put this on. It's going to be a vertical wall hanging that way. So if you're wondering why my skulls are all upside down and kind of sideways on here on the frame, it's because it's a long, skinny, tall quilt that I'm making for a little chunk of a wall that I have like next to my pantry in the kitchen. And so I went ahead and measured, and I don't know why I thought I needed 6 blocks all the way down. I guess if I hike it up higher on the wall, it'd be fine. But where I wanted it, I just needed 4. So that is what I pieced together here, and that's what I have loaded on my Handi Quilter Moxie and Loft frame. So we're going to talk a little bit about long arm quilting. I'm going to kind of walk you through things to consider and kind of how I think about these things. I'm not super precise when it comes to long arm quilting. I've only done super precise quilting, I mean, a handful of times maybe for quilt shows or a quilt that I'm doing for a specific event or something like that. But something like this, like Halloween kitchen decor, I'm not super picky. So it doesn't really matter if I mess up. And so that's why it's a great project for me to do while I'm live on camera. Because if you were my original quilt club from a decade ago, you know I love to just turn on the camera, talk, run my mouth, and quilt. And everybody's always like, get off the camera, you're gonna mess it up, you're gonna mess it up. Even if I mess it up, it'll be okay. So I figured this would be a good project to take y'all with me today. Now, Susie says, I have a Moxie. Is that what you're saying there? You have a Moxie? I know that Margie has a Moxie as well. Awesome. Yes. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. I'm glad you like the Spooky Craft Week Winless Originals. Okay. So first thing is the setup here. I obviously went ahead and already basted it on here, but we have a regular quilt sandwich. You have the quilt top. There is batting in here. Okay. And then there is, if you want, can you give them the other camera shot just so I can show them a little bit of a different angle on the quilt? We'll see if this works. Ta-da! Okay, so we have the quilt top. You see I have my batting in between. And then the last bit of spooky fabric that I had is underneath. It's like a chunk that I had in my stash from last year. It's like witches. They're going to be sideways on the backing, but it's okay because I didn't have any bigger pieces to use and I wanted to get it loaded quickly. And it's going to be on the back. Nobody's going to see it. Okay. Now, I went ahead and basted this. I am doing something that we call floating my quilt top. That means that this leader that I have here, before I drop all this stuff, this is a leader, okay? And you see that there's nothing on here. It's just the canvas fabric rolled onto itself on this pole. This one you can see has pins, and up top here has pins because one long edge of my backing fabric is pinned up here, and the other long edge of my backing fabric is pinned here. So we have the backing pin taut in between these two rollers, okay? And then this one here is supposed to be for pinning the same way we did here, but pinning our quilt top. Okay, I will say I've been floating my quilts for 16 years now, 17 years almost. And so when I first went to training with Handi Quilter, I was just like, I'm not going to pin it. But ever since then, and after getting home, I did pin a couple of my smaller baby quilts, and I do find that it just helps kind of keep things from shifting a little bit less, and it's less that I have to eyeball on the ends to keep it nice and straight. So I do go ahead and pin just the bottom edge of my quilt tops usually. If you're wondering why I didn't do it on this one, it's because this ain't even really a quilt. Like, it's a strip of fabric, okay? So there's not much here that's going to be moving and shifting on me. I've pretty much basted almost the entire thing. Now, let's talk about that. Basting it, I just stitched about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch away from the edge up top and down the sides as far as I could go. If you can see on this camera, I can't really come all the way, and I'm going to pull the machine forward so you can see. That's it, okay? I can't pull it any more forward because the back of the machine, this is the throat space, the back of the machine is already hitting my poles over here, right? And so I can't come any further. This is probably one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of beginning long arm quilters make, whether you have a setup yourself or if you're renting a machine at a shop or a studio or something to quilt your own quilts. It's that you get so excited, you load everything, and you're like, and I'm off. And then you realize as you're advancing the quilt that you're trying to do a design and you can't go any further because you've already basically met the limit of the throat space that you have here, okay? And so that can be a really big problem. It'll mess up your design if you don't anticipate this bit ahead of time, okay? And I'm saying that all to say, if you're in the market and you're thinking about getting a long arm and you're considering obviously the price point, because the shorter the throat space here, the more affordable the machine is. So this is the Handi Quilter Moxie. This probably runs about $5,000 for the machine, the frame, and everything you need to get set up, okay? They have a new Moxie XL, okay, which adds 3 additional inches to this throat space, and it's about $3,000 more, I think. So they're always, people usually tell you, long armers will tell you, go with the biggest throat space that you can afford, because trust me, when you're quilting and you run out of space and you're halfway through a design, you are going to say a few choice words if you forget to anticipate this and shift your quilt as you're quilting to adjust, you know, to accommodate for that in the quilting design. That's why you often see me just do wobbly little lines back and forth, just back and forth, or something simple that I can accommodate any which way between me advancing the chunks of the quilt, okay? So what I wanted to mention here was that aside from that, notice I can only come this far forward. And if we look on this block, that means that I will not be able to quilt an entire block in one set pass, right? In order to reach this last bit, I would have to advance the quilt, okay, to reach here because I can't come any further. So that's super important to split up the design, and that helps you if you can anticipate that ahead of time. You can then break down and decide, how am I going to quilt this? If you wanted to quilt something like this and wanted to quilt block by block, I would probably say, okay, I go like this, slide the machine all the way down, and I can see that I clear that center fussy cut skull out of all of my blocks. So if you wanted to do some cool outline or something funky right around this block or stitch in the ditch, you could. However, if you were planning to do something in the border outside the block, look what happens here. I'm only about 3/4 of the way into this first border. I can't clear the border fully. So if I can't clear it all the way with my design, with my border design, you probably don't want to mess with that area until you've advanced the quilt. Does that make sense? It's tricky to explain until you get in front of the machine and you get to the border and you're like, ah, that's what Vanessa was talking about. So like here, I can clear the first border, so I can totally do a fun border design in this spider web fabric here. But I cannot do anything in this second border because I'm not even past the halfway point of it, okay? So you got to be super careful. Oop. Especially when we do blocks like this that are kind of like piece as you go, and all my strips were slightly different measurements. If you had the exact same block over and over again, then you would be able to kind of streamline a little bit more what your quilting design would be, right? Because then you would have identical centers, identical borders around it, and then you could work that way and then advance and continue to work. But it's important to note that if I wanted to do something, say in this big orange border, okay, I'm gonna have to break up that design somewhere on this machine because look, I can do the whole top border, okay? If I come down here on the orange side and do whatever I wanna do, pretend a little design here, that's it. I can only get to here. I can't even finish the sides. So you would have to pick a design or come up with something of where you could finish your stitching off on one of the seams or somewhere that it's a little bit hidden so that when you then advance it, then I would be able to basically do this bit, okay? So this is kind of like the planning that has to come ahead of time before, okay, you just press the button and start stitching, okay? Then I was gonna mention over here, I don't think you can see it on either. Oh, you can see it on that camera. This white acrylic that I have here on the base, okay? This is the, I think it's called like the So Steady base or something. This is a ruler base. The machine doesn't come with this. This is a separate accessory, but the reason I like to keep it on 24/7, even if I'm not using rulers to quilt, is because it allows me kind of like a bigger bed of the machine, right? Because if we remove this, I just have this little white part that's part of the machine itself. Okay, so if you're smoothing things out or you're kind of have your hand leaning on it, you're gonna sink the fabric down because there's no foundation under it to support it up. So I like to leave my ruler base on at all times. And if you have a Moxie or if you're looking into one, I've linked to all these accessories in the description of the video below, just so you can check that out and, you know, kind of be putting together what other accessories you might want to have on hand just aside from the machine. Of course, the machine out the box, boom, boom, you can just start quilting, but things to think of ahead, okay? So my ruler base stays on all the time, okay? Whether or not I'm using rulers, because look, if I have it over here, all this is nice and solid. It's not sinking down if I press on here. So this really allows me to kind of smooth things out as I go, and you'll see I usually will quilt it with just one hand. Okay, my other hand is like making sure there's nothing bubbling up, everything is kind of staying smooth, holding things down, and I've just gotten used to it over the years of just quilting with one hand. Especially when you have a smooth machine, it's easier to just kind of quilt with a couple fingers and keep this hand free for whatever I need to do. Just make sure you don't run it underneath the presser foot because that would be a problem. Sometimes people feel like they need to quilt with both hands so they make sure they don't stitch their fingers. That's, you know, obviously an option. After having the ruler base on here, the other thing I have is the sure foot. This foot, and again, I linked to this, and there it went, my acrylic template. This foot is just, it's really the one you want to have if you're going to be doing any type of ruler work because it's higher, like thicker up. Okay, sometimes people will say, well, I'm not going to get the extra foot. I'm just going to use rulers and use the narrower, thinner foot, and be very careful. This applies to those of you that are doing free motion quilting on a sit-down sewing machine as well as on a long arm. Very careful because the thinner feet can really easily go underneath the ruler, and then when the ruler slides under it, right, you're stitching through the acrylic and it'll start, obviously you can jam up your machine, little chunks of plastic will go everywhere. And so having a thicker silhouette here, the body of the foot itself, makes it a lot easier to run along the side because it's like the same thickness as the template itself, okay? So then the other thing I wanted to mention, if you are going to be doing ruler work, this is the one that I would recommend. I don't do a lot of ruler work, and I do have a lot of rulers. It just takes a long time. So if you're not confident in your free motion skills and you just don't feel like you can wing it and do, you know, all over edge to edge designs, starting to build up a collection of rulers is going to be helpful. This is the Handi Versa tool. I linked to this one again. This is obviously a Handi Quilter tool, but it has a bunch of different things in one. You can probably see it a little bit here, but I mean, it's clear also. But there are some straight angles for a triangle. There's curves. There's like an inner curve and outer curve. And then there's also a little bit of a straight edge here, okay? And that's the one that I use if I'm going to be doing some echoing just to the outside of a ditch, of the stitching in the ditch, or trying to stitch in the ditch of a project, okay? Let me pop into the chat real quick. Winless Original says, I started with a brother. I don't remember which model. I have a loaner. Oh, they're talking about sewing machines. I see. Yeah, I have a lot of reviews on regular home sewing machines. If you're looking for a sewing machine that can stitch bags and quilts and that you can dabble in free motion quilting with, I would definitely recommend the Juki TL2010Q or the TL18, one of those machines that Juki has that are semi-industrial. They're just high-powered straight stitch machines. They don't do zigzags or decorative stitches. It's just straight stitch, but it's great for learning sit-down free motion quilting, okay? Okay, now, let me move this out the way for now. I may use it in a second, but I need to think. Let me clip on my little thread snips here. I need to think what I'm going to do to quilt this. I was just going to do an all over meander, and then I thought, well, maybe I will do some little echoing or some stitching in the ditch just to kind of show y'all how you would do it with that ruler. So let's do that then. Let me grab my the Handi Versa tool, and I'm just going to put, can you see that? I mean, it's far away, but you can get the idea. This is obviously not going to be like an intensive because I would need to have, and there goes that quilt. One of my quilts, the humidity, since we were without power for almost 5 days from these hurricanes, you know, had to have the windows open and everything. And all my little stickies that I use, the 3M things, have just been popping off all the walls. But anyways, I'll adjust that. Okay, so I am stitching on, there's several stitch modes on this machine and on most long arms, okay? You're gonna have a manual stitch mode, which is just, the machine is just gonna stitch and you control the stitch length depending on how fast or how slow you move, okay? Then you have some stitch regulator options if you have a machine that has stitch regulated modes. This one has 2 stitch regulated modes, one called Precision and the other one called Cruise, okay? The difference between the two, they're both stitch regulated, meaning no matter how fast or how slow I move the machine is going to be working super hard to keep that stitch length the exact same size. Okay, so it's regulating my stitches. Precision, you can be stitching, 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 and as soon as you stop, wherever that needle position is in the process of making a stitch is just going to stop on a dime. Okay, so it's usually the one that you probably want to have on if you're going to be doing any type of ruler work. Okay, cruise control is like the machine's just stitching, stitching, stitching. When you stop, the machine just gonna keep stitching, stitching, stitching. Okay, so I don't really recommend that one for beginners because you're, you know, kind of a little bit anxious and freaking out and you're not sure where to go on your next thing. And when you stop in a spot, the machine's just gonna keep stitching, 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 stitching. And then it makes you even more nervous of like, oh no, it's still stitching. I need to move quick. And so then you're gonna end up with like a nugget of thread buildup in one spot, okay? And you don't want that. So if you're a beginner and you know you can't control it on manual mode, I would probably recommend that you go on Precision. That way you can stitch, and then when you freak out and stop, it'll just stop with you, okay? So that's what I recommend. Let's see if we can do some of this. I haven't done this in a couple years because I rarely ever do. So the rulers, whatever ruler you're using, whatever template, it's going to be offset by 1/4 inch. Okay, so it's not like I'm going to align it right on a seam and then be able to stitch 1/4 inch over from that. It don't work that way. You're going to slide it over and then it's going to be 1/2 inch fully because that's the diameter of the presser foot, okay? And then the needle's in the center. So the center of 1/2 inch diameter is going to be 1/4 inch, and that's how you're stitching 1/4 inch over. So without the ruler first, I'm just going to take a stitch down. And I'm just eyeballing the 1/4 inch. I'm moving it away so I can pull up my thread here. And I'm just going to take an extra stitch in place just to kind of secure that. But I brought my bobbin thread up, okay, so that I don't have any of those thread nests on the back, okay? I'm in precision mode, and you can adjust the stitches per inch. I have mine set to 10 stitches per inch, okay? So I'm just going to stitch straight down here, and I'm going to stop when I get off on the other edge here. Oops. Hold on, because I'm in a different setting. It just bumped up to 11 stitches per inch. I need to get out of settings. Okay, there we go. I was adjusting my settings before. So, you see, it's like lagging and the needle is like taking up. And I just pressed the play/pause button to sink the needle down. And now it's at 1/4 of an inch over from there. Now, one thing, this quilt has a ton of different colors on it, mostly, obviously, white, black, cream, orange, stuff like that. I'm just using a gray thread. Okay, that's going to make it a lot easier for me to not really worry too much about if I mess up, if I meant to do a meander and my lines crossed, or if I did a loop by mistake, because it really takes a long time for you to really get a good handle on anticipating where you're going, or you got stuck in a spot, or oh no, the thread is going to look bad on that color fabric that's coming up. Let me avoid it. There's a lot of that kind of like last minute stuff that goes on if you're freehanding this, okay? So I'm going to come down here, and actually I'm going to take one more stitch forward. Right there. That's better. Just so I can be nice and aligned. And a lot of this is eyeballing it. I've been doing this a long time, freehanding really with mostly manual mode. So I sink the needle down. The little chunk that is straight on my the Handi Versa tool here is not that long. It's not as long as the seam that I need to sew. So I just stop with the needle down once I run out of space, and then I just pick up my template and slide it over, okay? Okay, and I'm going to go a little more over. Sink it down there. Now, here and here was kind of easy because it's coming towards me. Here now, I'm going away from myself. It can be a little bit tricky. And you know what? Let me try and... I don't want this. This lens weighs a lot, and I don't want it to just totally flop on me. So I feel like the whole tripod will go like that because I don't have the counterweight on the back. Okay, anywho. So now I need to go away from me, and I can't really see because the machine is in my way. So this again is like the setup of it, and holding my hand, my full hand is going to be down on this. It's still away from the needle, but I need to have enough weight so that it's not just like 2 fingers and my hand is twisted like this. That makes it really easy for the ruler to move. So I'm just going to put my full hand straight down, make sure I have everything aligned right where I want it. And I'm just going to put my whole hand down and then stitch and just push the machine away from me as it's running right alongside of that template. And right there, we'll sink it in. I always stop because I like, you know, you're moving around, switching positions, adjusting your hands and stuff like that. I don't want the needle to be up because then I'm going to move it out of place, right? Like you'll jump and you have a longer stitch. We don't want that. So that looks really good. And of course, I'll post pictures on social media later so y'all can see the actual close-up of what you're watching me do here. Now, we need to go across this way. So I somehow need to hold over here. Okay, obviously if you're at home you can kind of adjust your body on where you need to be. I'm right hand dominant mostly, so I still want my right hand to be here and moving the machine. So I need to figure out how can I hold this with my left so that it stays steady, doesn't slide, and doesn't lose my spot. Okay, so I'm pushing it up against the foot of the machine so it's nice and straight. And I'm just going to put as much downward pressure as I can here. This is where that ruler base really, really helps. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Now I can slide it over a little bit. And that looks good. Now I'm going to hold it on this side because I only need to go about 1 inch on this side. So you got to, it's a lot of switching and swapping. So you see what I mean? Ruler work, it takes a long time. If you're doing it by hand. If you have the funds and you're going to go ahead and get software for your machine, then you're going to be all set because you're really going to have fun with all kinds of wild designs and fun things. and you don't have to sit here and do this with the ruler. All right, so I finished. I'm exactly where I want to be, but I'm missing about 2 inches of a gap before I get to my beginners, like the initial stitches I started with. So that's the little bit that I'm going to stitch right here. So I'm coming back in this direction again. And I'm going to overlap my stitches by just 1 stitch right there. That's it. Now we're going to stop. That's all I wanted to do was say frame out that inside fussy cut block, okay? So I'm going to bring the needle up, pull my project away, pull some slack from this top thread, go back, and I have a bunch of videos where I show you how to do this. This is what you would do on a sit-down machine as well to bring up the bobbin thread, okay? And then I cut everything here from the top. That way you don't have to be like going underneath the machine and trying to cut your bobbin thread or none of that. My little scissors. It's like they have some tacky glue on them or something. Okay, so that's how you would use something like this. Even if you have a long ways of a seam to go, just with this little bit, you could keep sliding it over and over and over. But of course, you know, they also sell templates that have a longer straight edge. Now, for the rest of this thing, whoops, there I am. For the rest of this, the easiest, fastest way would be to just do an all over meander along the length of this, right? Because this is going to be a vertical wall hanging, that means that the meandering lines will be running vertically down the wall. And I usually like to go the opposite direction, but I think for a wall hanging for a kitchen Halloween party decor, I think it will be fine, okay? So I think that's what we're going to do. And I'm just going to go as far as I can here because remember, I can only come to right here. So even if I wanted to do some loop-de-loops in here, I mean, I could still do it. It would just take me longer. I wouldn't be able to run through and do it right there. And over here, I'm short on that also. So let's do this. Let's come to this center. Let me see this one. Oh, this one I can do. Yeah, so let's do some wobbly bits up and down like this in this spider web. I mean, in this white spider chunk of a strip here. And I'm trying to decide where do I want to start. Let's see, if I go up and down, 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 I'll do a loop in the corner. Let's do that. Okay, so I'm going in to one of the previous stitches in the corner from the frame out that we just did. And I'm going to take just 1 or 2 stitches in place to lock it after. Okay, not before, but after I've already brought up the bobbin thread. And we're going to wing it. Let's go. I'm just going kind of back and forth, kind of tight, so that the fabric and the batting can really be kind of like squished down in that area. And because I framed out the skeleton or the skull head here, that frame is popping up because I'm squishing down everything that's around it, okay, if that makes sense. So let me think which direction I need to go to do the loop in the corner. Okay, this way. And I'm just going back and forth. One thing I love about freehand is that it doesn't matter. Let me stop and cut these threads before I stitch over them. This is going to look super cute. Okay, and we came back to our starting spot. I'm going to press the button to make the needle sink down. Then we'll do individual needle up with this button, come back down and pull up the bobbin thread and trim my threads. Okay, easy peasy. So see, something like that, you don't have to drive yourself nuts trying to make it super perfect. Because it's gray thread on a mostly white fabric, it blends in beautifully. Gray is my go-to. Y'all can probably see. Can you on that one? Nope. I use my my gray thread, like a light pale gray. I use it most often for almost everything, whether the fabric colors that I'm using in the quilt are light or dark, okay? You can't see it there, but it's a big cone of it. Now, I did go ahead and put a link in the description box below to Glide thread, which is what we sell in our online shop and what I use. I obviously, when it's like a color like this, I buy it in an even bigger cone for my machine, but we sell cones. I think they're like 1,000 meters or 1,000 yards. They last a good long bit, and we have a ton of different colors that y'all can check out. So if you're looking for free motion quilting thread or machine embroidery thread, it's great for that too. It can be for long arm machines or for sit down free motion. I also use Glide thread for that, okay? So you can definitely check that out. Okay, let's see. Oh, maybe y'all are talking about other sewing machines, I'm not sure. Oh, Josie says she has a Juki TL18 QVP. She says, I start sewing for a while, and then my needle breaks. I would check and see if the timing's not off a little bit on that machine, because since the machine stitches so fast, if you're doing free motion and that's when it breaks, you know, there's a lot of friction going back and forth as you're moving that fabric up. So if the timing's not exactly right, that could be causing you some issues with the needle breaking. So be careful with that. Okay, so that little frame is done there. This guy, let me see, I can reach all the areas here too. Ooh, just to the edge, like a 1/4 of an inch past this frame. But we can do that framing here too. And I think what I'll do on this one is something a little bit different. You got to stop and plan. Like, I don't really like to plan my designs. I like to just start and go, which is easier if you're starting off on a side seam or inside of a point or something. But when it's a square, rectangle like this, and it needs to come back and match up, then you have to think about, are you going out when you started, or are you coming in, so that when you get to the end, you can make it look like a more seamless design. So that's the only downside to having to plan these designs that are not just a wobbly line back and forth. My fave. I'm trying to see, what do I want to do here? Because I need to, you know, change positions in the corners. I think maybe I'll do the same thing I did here. Well, I don't want to do the same because then I can't follow them in these because these frames are bigger. Let's see, what shall we do? I don't know. I'm going to sink my needle down and wing it once I start. So I brought my bobbin thread up, take 2. This is the part that takes the longest. Okay, y'all think it's a lot when we have to pick out our fabrics? We pick out our thread, you have everything here, and then you got to pick another thing, the design, okay? All of this stuff takes brain power. Let's just go. And you can see I can go slow, I can go fast, which is helpful to have it stitch regulated because the border is not very wide. It's only about 1.25 inches, this one. So you can't really go fast because there's nowhere to go, right? It's only 1.25 inches. I'm just kind of doing these loop-de-loops when I get to the corner, just to kind of pivot on that 90-degree angle. See, I have to like stop and think what I'm doing before I get to the loop-de-loop. Stop. I should have trimmed these threads earlier so they're not in my way, but you get the idea. Once you do even a little thing like this, you're doing so many of the starts and stops that you will have that practice down pat. Okay, sink it in, and we're done with that border. See, they don't take long. Even if you don't know what you're doing, just do a little something. You know, going back and forth in some direction, around and around, and you'll be done. Because it's not like you're covering a huge space, especially for this type of a block. And again, even though I didn't frame out the skull here, it still pops because I squished down the frame around it. So this is a little bit loftier and puffier, right? Obviously, the puffier the batting you use, the more these types of areas that you compress all the fabric layers next to it, wherever that batting is floating by itself is going to allow it to pop, which is a great idea, right? If you're doing something like this with a fussy cut image that you want to pop. This one turned out really cute with the frame too. That helped out a lot there. All right, let's see. What else can I do here? This guy, we can frame out the black frame on here. I'm going to use the Versa tool again. And I'm just going to stay to the outside. And I think this one y'all can see better on this camera. So that's good. Give y'all a little bit more of a close-up. All right. Okay, we're going to start here, 1/4 of an inch up and 1/4 of an inch over from the frame. And then, of course, make sure that you have a new bobbin in there, because running out of bobbin thread is no fun. Usually on the bigger quilts. On something like this, even if I had a little bobbin in there, I really am not going to run out, because it's not using much here. Okay. So you hear how it sounds slightly different when I move fast, right? And I can move faster because it's a straight line. So it's a lot easier to go a few inches like that, nice and straight. Nice and straight. And it does look good when you have these nice kind of framing out stitches where the stitch regulator has kept them all the same length. They just look beautiful. You can do it in manual mode, which I did for almost a decade. But it does look really, really pretty when you can do it regulated, okay? Go a little more. Now, last time I think I had it like this with the ruler to the outside. It could also be like this, okay? My job with the ruler is to make sure that I'm keeping the side of the foot up against the ruler. So whether it's this way or that way, I just have to know so I know how to guide the ruler correctly, okay? And evenly, nicely spaced. Whoop, stop right there. Okay, I had to straighten that out. There we go. And that actually works better for me because I'm still in the right position instead of crossing my hands. The more you do the stuff, the more it'll come to you. Okay? Stop. This way. And then we're coming back to our beginning. Okay? And the same as last time, I'm just going to come back down in this first direction that I started by a couple stitches to secure my stitch ends. That's it. I'm going to cut my threads right there. It's a lot of fun. If you get a chance to demo a long arm at a quilt show or anywhere like that, I think you would really, really like it. It's a great investment too. I mean, considering how much it costs to even just free motion, you know, something simple edge to edge, you could definitely pay it off soon enough if you were going to be working, you know, selling quilted services at least. Let's see. I always make sure to check the bobbin before top stitching. Other than that, I usually play bobbin chicken, LOL. Yeah, some of the fancier machines, like a regular sewing machines, will beep at you and let you know. I know my Baby Lock embroidery machine gives you a notice basically saying for the number of stitches that this design that you're trying to stitch out has, you don't have enough bobbin thread for that. I was like, whew, thank you. You know, some of those embroidery designs have like 50,000 stitches, so that's good to catch it before, right? All right, so we've done this a little bit. This one I'm going to leave for now. Or maybe I should just frame it out. Let me just frame it out real quick. That way, whatever I decide to do, they'll all at least have some type of framing. But let me see. Yeah, I can go beyond it. You always got to check and make sure that you can actually stitch where you want to first. Needle down, needle up, bring up the bobbin thread. And the busier the fabric, for those of you that want to learn and then you think, oh, I made this pretty quilt, but I just got my long arm, I'm scared to use it. I don't want to mess up the quilt. Scrappy projects are your best friend when it comes to first learning. That's what I mostly learned on. Because you have so many fabrics. As long as you use a neutral-ish thread, you're going to be able to just do all kinds of stuff on it. I know some of us like to start quilting and practicing on just like quilt sandwiches, but unless you're going to be cutting them up and turning them all into little thread baskets, You're not really going to do much with that, you know? I like to start quilting already on an actual quilt so I can do something with it. All right, we're almost done with this frame. And so you can see, if I tried to freehand stitching in the ditch or doing a little frame like this, it would take me a lot longer. Like here, I'm talking and I'm kind of just stitching beyond it. And you can really, really go through quickly. And frame some things out and then, of course, go back in and then fill in with, you know, other little decorative designs and stuff. Don't move on me. All right. Okay, I'm going to stitch a few this way just to secure. Good. And that's it. We'll cut our threads here. Having the frame also gives me kind of another border to hide my stitches at. If I'm doing something else in this area and I need to start and stop, I can always go to that line of stitching and cut my threads there just to stop so that it's all kind of interconnected. Okay, let's see. Let's see. All right. Oh, thank you, Phyllis. She says, hi, I'm enjoying the demo. Well, I'm glad you are. I know this is not for everybody, but sometimes it's fun just to see what the machines do and, you know, seeing the actual process, okay? Now, if you're wondering how is this quilt staying down, I think I mentioned this already. I base stitched it along the top edge and down the sides as far as I could go. So this bottom part is not basted because I couldn't reach yet with the machine without moving it forward, okay? So I'm just going to keep, you know, quilting in this area before I advance the quilt so that I can fit in those last couple of inches. And actually, I think I'm just going to do some wobbly lines just straight down because they all have kind of a thicker outer border there. And then I can advance the quilt and do more stuff on this side. All right, so that's what we're going to do. Let's go with an all over meander on one side. And when you have a neutral thread that really blends in with the fabrics, it doesn't have to be like symmetrically quilted either, okay? If you can see the quilt that's here on this wall behind me, or behind the frame here, I just did segments of all different types of motifs, and you can kind of see the texture back there. They can probably not see it on that one, but whatever. If you've seen my Blue Springs quilt, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, you can show it. Just take my bubble off, or you can move me. That quilt. You see all that texture that you see there? It's all negative space where you see gray. So I broke up the sections with the quilting, okay? It doesn't have to be like, oh, because this line is here, I have to stay within the parameters of this strip or whatever. You do whatever you want. That's the beauty of it. This is doodling with thread and pretty fabrics. That's how I see it. All right, so here we go. We're just gonna all over meander. And this comes so easily to me because I do it all the time. I'm not doing it super thick, like not too tight, not like micro stippling. And I'm going to slow down so you can hear me a bit. That's when you hear the machine's motor kick up because I tend to go super fast. This was my favorite thing to do on my first long arm that was just manual. It didn't have any stitch regulated, so that's how I learned, was on a manual long arm. I'm almost done. And I don't know what I'm doing. I just do whatever. It's just doodle, doodle, doodle back and forth. Ta-da! Awesome. Okay, that is, it's so fun, yo. Like so fun. Oh my goodness. Is to put two chunks of fabric and just, you know, with some batting in between and just quilt, 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 quilt. Whenever I don't use my long arm for a long time and then I get on it, I'm like, why did I wait so long to get back on this thing? Okay, so, oh, cut my threads here. So now, let me see. So I stippled that. This guy has a little border here, which is fine. That can even stay unquilted. I'm just trying to see. I'm going to advance the quilt. Make sure I don't mess with any of my cameras here. Hold on. You can't see it, but you can kind of see it. I'm rolling it up. Trying to stay out the way of this one. And then let me lock this back up. Okay, so now I advance it just a little, okay? So now look what happens. I can't go further back than pretty much where I've quilted because this is already here, like the bars are already blocking me from going further, which means this space that I can't go back, now I actually gained it on the front end. Oh, and I can almost make it. I could probably advance this just a hair more so that I can reach the full bottom here, and that way then I could baste down the sides and then quilt the rest of the stuff. So this is the distance that I have to work from. From there, from beyond the outermost border, all the way almost to the edge here. So I'm gonna push this up just a hair more. And of course, I could have loaded this also the other direction and been able to do a ton of the designs that I wanted to going up and down, you know? But I wanted to just get this thing done. So I loaded it sideways on here. All right. Yep, there I'm beyond the edge. So that should be good. Okay. So I always slide it and double check and make sure. Can I reach beyond the edge? I can. Perfect. On there, here too. Yep. All right. So let me baste along the bottom edge. And for basting, you can change the number of stitches per inch that the machine stitches so that you can get like a proper basting stitch, which is bigger, right? Longer straight stitch. I find that it's not even worth it going in here and changing that setting for me personally, because again, the smaller stitches really compress everything and hold everything nice together instead of having it be a little bit looser with the longer stitches. So I just leave it. Some people even use it so that they measure for attaching their binding. They use that straight stitch line of a shorter stitch length to do their binding edge, like to line it up against that. Now, I'm floating my quilt here, okay? Don't judge. This is how I do it. I have my ruler base on, so I have this harder surface on both sides, and I'm gonna use this hand to keep everything smoothed out this way so that this edge that I'm trying to baste down doesn't keep flipping up on me, doesn't move, doesn't stretch or nothing, okay? So here we go. I don't have any like channel locks or anything on this machine, so this is just me eyeballing it and maintaining it about 1/8 or a scant quarter of an inch away from the edge. That again takes practice, but if you have a fancier machine that has channel locks, then you can set those channel locks so that it just stitches in a straight line. But I like to manipulate it since again I started long arm quilting back in what, 08? Huh? 09, 08, I think, one of those. A long time ago, and everything was manual mode. It was basically just an industrial Singer sewing machine that was on a frame. So I had to do everything by hand, so you know. Bad habits take a long time to fix, so I just do it because it's easier for me personally. All right, so notice what I did there. I started in the center, basted away, and then the last little bit this way. So now I cut my threads there, I came back to the center, and I'm gonna go center out, right? Where have y'all seen that? In a lot of our quilting stuff, when we're quilting foam for bags and things like that, we're starting from the center out so that you can smooth that fabric out and away. If I were to start basting from the corner in, any excess fabric, I'm gonna be pushing it into the center and potentially end up with a pleat or a pucker right here. I don't want that. So we wanna go from the center out and from the center out in the other direction, okay? And I do that all the time. Again, it's just one of those things that's how I started. And so that I don't run into any issues, I just do it for every single quilt, no matter how big or how small. All right, we're down the bottom. Now I come down and I'm going up the side so that it meets up with the last basting I did from the first round. Okay, done and done. And one of the reasons I say that I baste about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch is because I rather go narrower, like shallower, into the fabric than wider. Because if you go bigger than 1/4 of an inch, will it still be basted? Yes. Will it still work? Sure. But guess what? After you go back in there and attach your binding, if you see any of your basting stitches, you're going to have to go in there and take them out so they don't show. So I rather baste narrower into the raw edge of the fabric so that I know for sure my binding is going to cover that when I go in to stitch the binding on. Zena says, I kept telling you to watch your fingers, Vanessa. I've been doing this a long time, Zena. But when you catch me live, you're going to see me doing it exactly how I do it. It's this. Everybody has kind of like their own preferred technique. I know people that they ease in any excess puckery, like a fluffiness in the quilt tops with like soup cans. They place them on here and they like roll back and forth, and as they roll, they're smoothing the fabric away and this and that. That's, you know, the super professionals that all they do is quilt for customers. They have seen it all. I used to quilt for customers a long time ago, but whew, you see all kinds of stuff when those quilts come in. All right. Yes, thank you, Sylvia. She says, don't forget to like this video, show your love. Yeah, if you're learning something or you enjoy these types of demos, definitely give the video a thumbs up. Let's see. Okay, so now the whole thing is quilted or is basted from here to here. And now, let me see. I'm going to just do some meandering this way. I'm going to stay away from this black border just so that the gray doesn't pop too much on the black. And so what's going to happen is the quilting inside of the black on the white is squished down with the stitches, and then on the outside of the black is going to be squished down too. So what's going to happen is this skull fussy cut portion is going to pop, as well as this black frame. It won't pop quite as much because I'm not going to frame it out with actual echoing stitching, but because everything to the inside and outside of it are going to be compressed with the stitching, it will stand up a little bit more. All right, so I'm just going to start off on the edge here, and we'll do a little bit of meandering. I'm obviously not going to be able to finish the whole thing here since I've been talking most of the time, but I will show y'all a picture once it's done. I'll post it on my page. Again, I'm just meandering and trying to stay away from the black so that I don't meander with a light gray thread on black. And when you hear the motor loud like that, it's because I'm going fast. It's hard for me to slow down. No surprise there. And I'm just meandering around the one block. I'm not going to go into the other one just yet because I don't know what I want to do yet. And I'm going to stop right there in between where both blocks meet up, just so that I can decide what I want to do. So I can kind of see a little bit of the black frame that's standing up just a touch, and then this part too. But everything else is compressed down, and that gray thread blends in so well. Y'all can't see it obviously because it's a little bit further away, but it looks really, really good. And I think that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to keep meandering around. Maybe I'll stay away. This one I'll probably meander all the way. I'm going to meander over the little ghosts here because it's such a narrow border, and I'll skip over the orange. And then on this one, I think I'm just going to do all of it and just skip over the black because that's framed out, and that'll be good. And then the same thing for this one, probably stay to the outside. Maybe I'll go in all the way because the gray on that light or in this darker orange, I think it will still look fine. Yeah, I think I'll just finish meandering. So that's all. You know, I did a little bit of custom quilting just to frame this out and do a little something on the border, but you could go in and do stuff around the border. The only thing is, keep in mind that throat space of your machine and how far over, based on the border design that you want to do, you can actually do with the throat space that your machine allows you, okay? So hopefully that makes sense, and I hope that y'all learned a little something. Be on the lookout for my new tutorial on how to make these Halloween earrings. Remember I told you I made some the ghosts, and I'll include the info on where I got the links for the designs and everything, okay? Jack-o'-lanterns, ghosts, and I'm wearing little bats. They're super, super cute. I'll be posting that tutorial soon, whoops, on my YouTube channel. These are my Black Widow earrings. They're so cute. Okay, and then if you want to learn how to make this fussy cut skull block, it's a great scrap buster. If you have a cute fabric that has a larger motif that you might want to fussy cut out to put it in the center of your block, obviously it doesn't have to be Halloween, it could be anything. You can totally use this technique to make several blocks. This would be a cute as a table runner, as a wall hanging like I made it, or even make a lot more blocks and turn it into a proper quilt. You can drape it over your couch for the holidays or whatever it is. So I have a step-by-step tutorial on how to make this block. And then again, if you're interested in the Handi Quilter Moxie or any of the stuff, the accessories I talked about, the ruler work and all that, all the links for that are in the video description box below, okay? If you learned something and you enjoyed it, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. And if you're not yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure that you head on over there, okay? Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. I am glad that you enjoyed the video. Thank you. Hi, Candy. She says, those are very cute earrings. Thank you so much. And I'll be back. I'll see y'all in the next video. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a great week.